trainer for medications unit for Meditech. I just wanted to do a little recording about task 5. Apparently the table is quite confusing, and I had a look at it and I agree, the table is quite confusing. So I'm just going to walk you through what's required for that task and where you need to write the different things. Hopefully it'll make some sense of that table for you. So let's have a look. What does the task actually want you to do? It basically wants you to choose the job title of the person who delegates for you to do medications in your workplace. So most places that would be a registered nurse. In some places in the community, for example, you might write general practitioner. It depends on who it is that actually delegates for you to do medications. So for this example, to make things a little easier, we're going to call it registered nurse, just so that I'm not using more than one name. So you need to write the position of the person who delegates to you. So we're going to say registered nurse for this example. We also need to find out what their registration number is. And you'll probably get a funny look from the person when you ask them. Let me explain why. Any authorised health professional must be registered with AHPRA. Now, when we say authorised health professional, we're talking about a general practitioner, a registered nurse, a midwife, a physio, all those different professions actually need to have each person registered with AHPRA. The registration number is the number they give you from AHPRA that relates to your practice. So my registration, for example, is different. My registration number is different to every other registered nurse in the country. So we need the exact registration number of that person because it shows that you're aware that there is a registration process, and to be registered, the person has to be fully qualified and actually registered with the AHPRA division. So please write the position of the person who delegates to you for medications, and also please ask them for their AHPRA registration number. Just explain that you need the registration number to write an assignment. You do not write the person's name because it's not asking you that. It's asking you what's their job title, what's their registration number. So once you have the information, where exactly do you write that? On this incredibly messy table. This is the first part of the table that you'll see when you go to the actual assessment task. So the first bit that says role of delegating health professional, that's where you write the job title of that person. So it might be registered nurse that you write there. You might decide general practitioner is the person that gives you the authority. You write that right next to the role. Okay, so it's just effectively the job title of that person. Ignore the second column, the second row, sorry, because it's a little bit messy and it seems to kind of be in the wrong place, which I think might be upsetting people. So ignore that second bit for now, and I'll explain in a minute. When you go down to the third row, it says registration number of the delegating health professional. That's where you write that AHPRA registration number. So for example, if it's a registered nurse that you've chosen and they have an AHPRA number, which they must, then in the top row, you would write registered nurse where the purple writing is. In the last row, you would write the AHPRA registration number. And I'll give you a tip now. AHPRA registration numbers for registered nurses start with letters. So just be sure that you do actually have that correct registration number and write it in that line. So what do you do after that? Okay, so you're at work, you figured out who the person is, what their job title is, you've got their AHPRA registration number and you've written that in. What's the next bit that you need to do? What it wants you to do is go and access the Lotus Compassionate Care Handbook. Now, you've done that before. I know that because I've marked some other assessments where I can see that you've been doing that. Once you open the Compassionate Care Handbook, you need to go to the section that relates to medication, okay? And it's a very long document, so just make sure that you're in the right section You've found the medication policies and procedures. In that section, you need to check who is allowed to delegate for you to do medications. So you would be looking for the table that says who can delegate, and then it also in that table gives a description of what that person can and cannot do when they're delegating, what they have to do. So once you've found that table, the delegation table, then you're going to go to the next section of this very long table where it says summary of provision. Does the health professional have authority to delegate? And the source. Okay, so let's go through this bit. The organisational policy. When you're summarising the provision, which is a very strange way of putting it, what do they have to do when they're delegating is basically what it wants to know. So in that table about delegating in the handbook, it says each position, like each job title, and it says whether they can delegate or not, and then it says what they have to do when they're delegating. What it wants you to do for summary of provision is write down what do they have to do when they're delegating. In the next column over, where it says, does the health professional have authority to delegate administration of medication tasks according to the document? Believe it or not, the answer is simply yes or no, depending on what's in that table. So if, for example, it was a registered nurse that you were talking about, you would go to that delegation table, you would have a look at what the registered nurse can and cannot do, and it will say in that table whether they can delegate medication duties or not. So if it says yes, they can delegate that, then the answer in that column is simply yes. If it doesn't list them or says that they cannot delegate medications tasks, then you need to write no. In the last column, the source, it's simply asking you, where did you learn that information that you've just written? So whereabouts in the handbook did you find it? What section did you find it in? Was it a policy? Was it a procedure? Was it a guideline? So probably a good idea to not just write the handbook, much better idea to write where in the Compassionate Care Handbook you actually found it. What policy was that under? The next row down says organisational guidelines. It simply wants to know, what does that person, that job role, need to do before they delegate? So what is the process for that? What must they do? And again, that is in that medication section of the handbook. Again, in the second column about them being able to delegate medications or not, it's just going to be the exact same answer that you wrote in the line above. It's a yes or no. So if you wrote yes in the first one, you're going to write yes in the second one. If you wrote no in the first one, you're going to write no in the second one. And again, under source, it wants to know whereabouts you found that information about what they have to do before they delegate. So just write down where in the handbook you found it, what guideline was it under. The next bit you need to do is look for the jurisdictional regulations table in the medication section of that handbook. You need to write down the name of the appropriate regulation in your state that allows them to delegate. So when we have a look at it, we're talking about the organisational protocols. What's their role in making sure how to give you medication? Does the handbook say it's okay? Again, it's going to be yes or no, like it has been for the entire column. And the last bit, again, where did you learn that information? So what protocol were you looking at in the handbook that gave you that information? The very last bit is the jurisdictional legislative requirements, which is a very lumpy way of saying what are they allowed to do regarding medications. So what is it that they're allowed to do? Again, the example we had was registered nurse. So what is a registered nurse allowed to do with medications? The second column, believe it or not, it's going to be yes or no, just like every other answer you've written in that column. And then the last column, the source, where did you get the information? For this one, we're looking at what act regulates the control of medications in your state or territory. So you need to write down which act, so which law, regulates the control of medications in New South Wales. Okay, you need the right title and you also need the correct year for that. And I know you know that because you've written that one in other assignments, so it shouldn't be that much of a problem. The next bit says the regulatory requirements. Summary of provision is simply who do they have to register with? So if it's a registered nurse, for example, who do they have to be registered with in order to be able to do their role? Again, the second column, can they delegate or not? It's just yes or no, like it has been for every other line. In the source for the regulatory requirements, it's asking what law does the table in the Compassionate Care Handbook regulations requirements, what law does that table say covers them? Okay, so you need to actually find that regulatory requirements table in the Compassionate Care Handbook, and that will give you a lot of the information. The last slide, if you're still confused, what do you do if everything I said just didn't make any sense at all? Well, that's okay. That happens. Contact the trainers and let us know. Okay, so let us know if this video did not help and you still have no idea what you're doing or you're not really sure. Let us know. Look, guys, if you give it a go and you get it wrong, it's okay. That's why you're studying, to learn stuff. And sometimes we don't get everything right the first time, and it's perfectly fine. What we can do if you give it a go and it's not quite right is we'll let you know how come it's not quite right and how to fix it. So please don't worry about getting things wrong. It's okay to do that. We might need to organise a support session that can help you understand what's actually required. And it is really hard because you're watching a recording and you're not actually getting to ask any clarifying questions. So does that mean this or so does that mean that? Hopefully this little recording and the slides for where to write stuff and what the stuff is actually asking you for might help. If you're still stuck, please let us know and we can try and organise another way of supporting you. So be courageous, give it a go. If you're really, really still confused, then let us know and we'll see what else we can do to help you understand. So hang in there, guys. You're doing really well so far. Not long now till the end. Thanks a lot. Hopefully I'll get to see you soon. Bye.